This time we're going to create another member function that is going to set all three variables at once. It's going to set person's first name, the last name, and the age. I'd call it a mutator function. As the book does, it changes the fields. And it's motivated by the idea that, okay, we've created this person and they're blank, but now we want to change some information about them. So one thing we could do is we could say p3.age is 33, etc. p3.firstname is whatever. I think that our third Facebook friend is Dustin. And p3.lastname. So that's one way, but you know, that would work. Sure, that's fine. Let's see how that compiles. Uh-oh, I'm missing semicolon here. Looks like something went wrong with this constructor. Somehow it changed between the end of the last video and the beginning of this one. Let's run that again. Great. So after we created that third person object, initially with the default values of John and Doe and age of 0, we can change those variables. And that's reflected when I run the code. However, we'd like to create maybe a more convenient syntax for doing that, just like we made this syntax really nice. We just put Mark Zuckerberg and everyone all in the same line. So let's change this. One thing we can do is we can say P3 is going to get a new person. Now we're going to create a totally separate person and assign that to the variable P3. Dustin Muskovitz 31. That'll work. It turns out you can call the constructor. This returns a person object, and you can reassign the variable P3. It now is going to get Dustin here instead of this default person, which was John Doe. This is kind of inefficient because we created this person John Doe initially, and then we replaced it with a person Dustin Muskovitz. That didn't make much sense there. Let's create a function that takes this existing person and just changes the values in those fields. It turns out for very large in certain situations, it's much more efficient to change an object rather than create a completely new one. So let's do that. I'm going to get rid of this line here, and we're going to add a member function. This is going to be another void member function. It doesn't return anything. It's just going to change the values of the first name, last name, and age fields. I'm going to create a function that's called setNameAndAge. It's going to take in 3 arguments: a string, the first name, a string, the last name, and an int. Actually, the same arguments types as this constructor here. It's going to work very similarly, but it's going to be a little bit more efficient because instead of creating an entirely new person object and reassigning the value that's stored in P3, we're just going to change the values of the individual fields of that person. We don't create a new person. So we can implement that function up here. Say it is a void function that's a part of the person class, so it has access to all the fields. It's going to be called setNameAndAge. It's going to take in 3 arguments: string, parameter, first name. And actually, these same arguments, I can probably just copy paste these for speed. Wow, something is going on with my copy and pasting thing. And actually, the behavior is going to be exactly the same. It's going to take those parameters, change the fields. So now P3, instead of creating a totally new person object and reassigning P3 to that new person, we're going to say P3 dot set name and age, and we're going to pass in Dustin's name and age. Now, when we print out, run the code, it's compiling right now, we get what we wanted, same as before. But it was more efficient this time because instead of creating a completely new person object to replace this John Doe person object, we've just changed the values that are stored in the fields. But the nice thing we can do here is we had some repeated code here between the default constructor, or excuse me, the no argument constructor, and the 3-argument constructor here. This was kind of repetitive here. Turns out now we can just call this member function from within the constructor and pass in these parameters. So let me do it here. I'll call setNameAndAge. We don't have to say p dot or anything like that because this constructor is part of the person class. It has access to the person's setNameAndAge function, and that setNameAndAge function has access to that person's first name, last name, and age. So all we need to do is call that setNameAndAge function and pass in the parameters, relay them over to that. Same thing here. We're going to pass in our own arguments. setNameAndAge. With the no-arg constructor, the default name is going to be John Doe, age 0. Again, let's see what's going on here. We pass in to our constructor now. Mark is the first parameter, Zuckerberg is the second, 31. The age is the last. That goes into the 3-argument constructor, which is right here. Those variables get stored temporarily in these parameters, first name, last name, and age. We're going to reload those parameters into the setNameAndAge function in the same order, and we are going to take them in as parameters, p first name, p last name, and ph. Now each of these have the same names as these. They're actually separate places in memory. These could be called x, y, and z for all we care. X, y, and z, and then we're going to set the fields, which are again different from these parameters, to these 3 values that are temporarily stored in those parameters. And I'm going to go ahead and name them the same thing because their name has a special meaning to us. And this code will work. Let's run it. Great. And what we accomplished is by creating this setter function, or this mutator function, setNameAndAge, we've simplified our constructors a little bit. We've reduced each of our constructors for 3 lines down to 1 line by writing this function. We also get the functionality of it. Instead of creating an entirely new person object down here, we can just change the existing person object name and age with the call that member function.